Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our live virtual trademark event with the Society of Professional Women. I'm just watching everyone come into the frame, so I wanted to give it a few seconds to allow those of you to join us. I'm Nicole Stevenson, Director of the Society of Professional Women program with the Mainline Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin today, I'd like to take a minute to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to be here. In a time of such uncertainty and disruption, this program would not be possible without the continued support of the members of our community and most of all, our sponsors. Your involvement keeps SPW and the Chamber strong. Please allow me to share my screen and thank all of the sponsors that continue to support our mission to accelerate the advancement and expand the influence of women leaders of all professions and generations, strengthen our business community, and support the region's nonprofits. So I'm going to share that slide with you all now. And I'm going to ask for a virtual applause. So now that we've thanked our sponsors on the slide, I wanted to give some updates about the Mainline Chamber of Commerce and tell you what we've been up to. We are focused on connecting our members with business, leadership development, and talent. It is vital to the strength and recovery of our region, and we are responding to current affairs on multiple fronts and in unprecedented ways. One opportunity we have created and made available to all is our free COVID-19 Recovery Resource Live Virtual Event Series. These live virtual events are being offered 1 to 2 times per week on a range of important topics. You can find all COVID-19 Recovery Resources Live Virtual Event recordings listed on mlcc.org, as well as all upcoming events available for registration. We're finding the need is great for our services during this time. The staff is fully engaged and working from home on projects that include Recovery Resources email communications about key issues affecting business, including federal stimulus, working to influence lawmakers to ensure effective relief programs for businesses and that they are adequately funded, live virtual networking events bringing members together around the purpose of helping one another, including our popular and newly revamped Network at Noon, virtual leadership and management trainings, the ongoing success of the SPW program, the region's largest women in business group, the expansion of the Talent and Education Network, dedicated to helping local students develop their careers to meet the needs of employers. And generally, we've ramped up our communications about how members can do business together and how consumers can support the businesses going through this recovery, including a constantly updated list of member restaurants that are offering curbside pickup, takeout, and delivery, and a wealth of additional resources and opportunities. You can continue to help us serve you by communicating with the Mainline Chamber of Commerce staff and also by interacting with us on social media using our hashtags, hashtag MLCC and hashtag SPW Mainline. Thank you again for your support. We do believe we are stronger together. And in order to continue our efforts to connect individuals with one another through networking during today's program, we will be sending the attendee list from today to all attendees and sponsors with information on how you can identify 2 individuals that you would like to have a 15-minute conversation with. And we will attempt to put you in touch with at least one of those 2 choices, and you will also receive a copy of this recording today. As most of you know, giving back to the nonprofit community is a big part of the SPW mission. Today, we'd like to highlight the American Helicopter Museum and Education Center, which uses the history and technology of rotary wing evasion as a gateway to STEM education. Its flagship education program is Girls in Science and Technology, or GIST, which aims to close the gender gap in STEM fields. Each year, over 75 girls in grades 4 through 12 gather at the museum every other Saturday from October to March to learn about topics like astronomy, engineering, and robotics from women working in STEM and female college students majoring in STEM disciplines. Post-program surveys have shown that GIST increases participants' sense of STEM careers as open to them, likelihood to major in a STEM discipline in college, and confidence in their own problem-solving and leadership skills. The museum is looking forward to welcoming a new class of GIST this fall. Please support the museum by learning more and visiting their website at americanhelicopter.museum. So before introducing today's esteemed guests, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. There is a chat and a Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. Please remember to submit your questions in the Q&A function as to not be lost in the chat function when it becomes time to get to them. We will be taking questions at the end of the program today for about 10 minutes. Today's speaker, Kimberly Ramallo, has nearly 25 years of communications experience and is credited with developing programs that deliver a high return on investment, motivate employees, and increase awareness of the business. She has served as Vice President, Communications and Public Affairs at Lockheed Martin, where she was actively involved in the corporation's diversity and inclusion efforts, and served as an executive champion for Lockheed Martin's Women's Impact Network, and as the Global Communications Director for General Electric's Water and Process Technologies business, where she developed and executed global communications strategies. Prior to these roles, Ramallo also held leadership positions of increasing responsibility with American Water, the largest publicly traded water and wastewater utility company, and Siemens Corp, a technology provider in several industries, including energy and healthcare. Thank you for joining us today, Kimberly. Let's also give Kimberly a virtual round of applause. Monique Braxton is an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist and media coach. Among her many honors and awards, she is a 2016 Broadcast Pioneer Hall of Fame inductee and the PABJ's 2013 Journalist of the Year, to name a few. Her exclusive interviews and compelling coverage of breaking news have made her one of Philadelphia's most respected journalists. Please also give Monique a virtual round of applause. Ladies, we look forward to hearing your perspectives into how those in leadership positions can embrace the next workforce generation and beyond to access gender equality. Welcome, and please take it from here. So I will unmute you if you have not unmuted together. There we go, and I will mute myself. Have a great time.
Good morning, Nicole and Kimberly. It is my pleasure to join you this morning. Hi, Kimberly. I am so excited to meet you and participate in this program with you. A lot of people know your history. They've heard you speak on a few different forums. But please share with us some of the highlights of your own journey.
Well, I think my journey is it's very different than most. When I graduated high school, I walked right into a wonderful job working in finance for about 8 or so years. And I just wanted to do something different. I thought I was going to be this mover and shaker, changing the world, and at the company that I work with, this pharmaceutical company, were doing a lot of work in the community. And during that time, I was like, oh, wow, I want to do what they're doing. How do I get over there? And how do I, really make a difference? And I took some time to reach out to one of the executives in that department and just on chance said, hey, would you sit down and have a chat with me and talk to me about my career? And she said yes. And she drove all the way from Madison, New Jersey to Kenilworth, New Jersey to have coffee with me. And she was like, hey, you great experience and everything, but my secretary is sitting here with a master's degree. There's 25 positions like this in the company. It's really important that you go and you credential yourself in something other than business and finance. So I took a 1-year sabbatical, parlayed my associate's degree into a 4-year communications degree, finished those last 2 years in about 13 months. And when I came back, I went to the company and said, hey, here I am. I'm fully credentialed, ready to do that job. And unfortunately, they didn't offer me that job. They offered me a job right back in the finance department. And I ended up leaving, taking a little bit of a break, just working to make money, and got my first break at a small agency. And from there, my career continued to take off. I continued to get education. I went to school part-time at night to acquire my master's program, and continued to think about every experience that I had in my career. How could I use this as a stepping stone to get to the next level? And every company that I worked for really brought together all of my complete experiences and helped me really grow my career to ultimately becoming a vice president. I didn't set out to be a vice president. I set out to make money and pay my bills, like most people when you're young and out on your own. But it turned out that way, and it's been a great career. And then, of course, I've been able to have a family and all of that along the way. I have, twins. They're 12 years old now, and they're homeschooled. So if you hear any craziness in the background, I gave them strict instructions not to do that. But they're kids. So what are you going to do? But I do think that it's important to really have a plan for yourself. And I believe if you are looking for that next step or wanting to do something different, finding the right people to help guide you, guide your career.
What an amazing career you've had and an amazing journey. And we're so honored to have you here participating today. A lot of people now understand that diversity and inclusion are important to grow any business. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation about the Crown Act, which bans discrimination based on a prospective employee's hair. Share with us why it's important to bring women from all backgrounds to the table.
Well, I think diversity is really important because, diversity of thought is what's going to give you a better result in the end. Creating a natural tension, and not a negative way, but a good kind of tension where you're challenging ideas, you're challenging solutions. A lot of time when I'm working, I tell my team, try to convince me that the idea we have is wrong. Let's poke at that really good idea, bring the perspectives that you have. And even if we all sort of look the same, you could have been raised differently. You could have gone to different schools. You could have had different experiences in the workplace, different experiences personally, the cultural backgrounds, and all of those differences help you communicate with the world around you. If I look at the companies that I've worked for, our customer base has changed over time. And I'll be honest, the companies I've worked with were all boys clubs. Guess what? Ladies are in the workplace as well, and ladies are decision makers. It's a very different world that we've seen in the last 25 years. So if you're sitting there running a company with 25 men, those 25 men have one perspective probably of what the male population is interested in. So adding women gives you that additional depth of experience and expertise, and then looking at different people of color, different backgrounds. So, and there's so many studies out there that really do say, McKinsey's done studies, so many other consulting firms have credible research that say companies who have more diverse employees will be more efficient, they will be more productive, and guess what? They will be more profitable. So how can you argue with that? And quite frankly, with my leadership teams, my last leadership team was a real blend. White male who was out of the military, African-American male, very, very hot on diversity, a real champion and role model. A Mexican female who came from Mexico and migrated here and, with her family and is still going through struggles, and a white woman. And then, of course, myself. And, you look at that, and it was interesting to be in these meetings. The conversations we would have, the little tiffs, that tension. You learn every day. And I believe being a constant learner is really the only way you're going to grow. And if you're talking to people that are just like you, you're not really learning very much.
I think it's amazing that you have such a diverse team. And quite honestly, all of us bring our background to the table.
Absolutely.
Not just our education, our community work, our family life, our culture. And I think that kind of sums up what every corporation needs at this point. And congratulations. In 2019, you won an award, the Alice Paul Empowerment Award, for your lifelong passion for diversity and inclusion.
Right.
I thought about something when I was researching you for this presentation. In a speech that day, you said that the next generation of leaders need to recognize their worth. Equality isn't just a dream, but it's an attainable goal. What steps can women take to empower future leaders of all backgrounds in the workplace?
Yeah, that award was, I have always had a special place in my heart with Alice Paul, also a nonprofit, and really looking at how do we create the next generation of female leader. And they have so many amazing programs. And I had worked at American Water. I started this relationship with them, and obviously not even thinking that I would ever be an award, recipient of the award. And the award that I got was on empowerment. And it really was around, how do we empower people to take control of their lives? How do we empower them exactly for what you said, like to have everything that they want? We can and should be able to have everything that we want. And if I think about the steps that I take and the advice that I give people, it really is starting with yourself, thinking about who you are, understanding your own biases. A lot of times when I'm making hiring decisions, I will bring my HR business partner. I will bring in other folks that are really different from me to say, help me through this, help me, even at ratings time, help me make sure that I'm doing the right thing and that I'm controlling my own biases. So really, starting with yourself to understand who you are and identify your own biases, meeting others in the middle, suspending judgment with people's behaviors. We were talking about hair a little bit earlier and style. Immediately when you look at somebody, don't form that opinion. Suspend that judgment. Have a genuine curiosity. Ask questions. If you don't understand the way somebody is or what they're, why they're doing what they're doing, go ahead and ask that question and then find common ground so that you can work together. And, when you're meeting somebody in the middle, you start to develop a really strong relationship. And then finally, I have children now, raising your children right. That's how you change the world around you, helping them understand the differences and celebrate them over the time of their lives. My husband and I were out of the house working. We had au pairs in our home from all different countries. And my kids have a real deep respect for differences because we had people living in our home that were very different than us. My husband's family is really right off the boat from Portugal, if you will, and they're first generation here. So, those types of things help to create an environment where you can attain everything. And I really do believe that we have the power to create this movement, if you will, where nothing is out of reach, where everything is really attainable. So,
Right.
I gave that speech. My son and my daughter were in the room, and of course, I don't know how many other people, 600 other my best friends in the room. And I remember talking about my daughter, and I look at her now, and I'm like, this girl was a 2-pound, 15-ounce baby, almost didn't make it. And now she's so vibrant and so confident and so strong. And she is the next generation, and we have to nurture that. And we have to be the best role models that we can be for that.
And you've been intentional about your work with diversity. Right now, how do you motivate upcoming leaders when they're looking at the lifelong longevity of men and higher salaries in their environment?
There are, again, lots of studies out there that show that men get into the workplace and they're already starting out higher than women. Women are already disadvantaged. So let's just say me and, Joe get hired. He's probably already making more money than me. And guess what? Joe's probably getting more opportunity than me to do that big project. The expectations of Joe are a little bit different than the expectations of a woman. So when I think about what motivates women and what motivates men, it's also very different. Men, I think, are motivated by title and money. Women are motivated by feeling respected and feeling valued and making a contribution. Now, I don't want to have a major stereotype, and I know the way I'm talking now is stereotypical, but it's just been the experience that I've had. And there's men and women are totally different. They're just different people, and that's okay. But I think that when we want to nurture everybody, these rules will really work for anybody. But I think for women mostly, mentoring has to be a must. We have to take those women under our wing, high potential women, and not only just mentor them so that they're getting the right advice, but sponsoring them and championing them through the process. It's like when I took that sabbatical years ago from finance to communications, got great advice from a mentoring standpoint, but in terms of sponsorship, where was that person? And I'm definitely not upset, but where was that person when it came time to put me in that chair, to give me that opportunity, even a junior opportunity, to get there? So without sponsorship, it's very, very difficult to move forward. I think the reward system that we have, not everybody is motivated by the same thing. So really getting to know the people that you work with and the people that are working for you and understanding what motivates them. Some people need maybe some more additional flex time. Some people would love to have Mondays where they can work from home because they have a situation, whatever it is, and rewarding people in a creative way, providing opportunities for growth and for project management, and not saying, here, Sarah, go do this project and you're on your own. Give them that challenging project, but be there to help them through it. You can't just put somebody out there. It's like throwing your child in the pool and saying, go ahead and swim, without giving them direction, and then giving them opportunities to learn. You know, people want to, I believe everybody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be my best self. I want to deliver really good work today, really good value. I want to feel good about the 10 or 12 hours that I am away from my family every day. Okay. And nobody wants to work like a hamster spinning the wheel, not doing anything and not being recognized. So, you know, I would say if we could be mentoring and sponsoring, continuing to reward people the way they want to be rewarded and offer opportunities for exposure and learning, that's the way you motivate women.
You know, you mentioned sponsorships. I read that you were talking to Thrive magazine, and you said that mentorships are to provide guidance and networking, but sponsorships, especially those who have proteges, they're the ticket to the top for those proteges. Share with us 2 or 3 crucial steps that sponsors can take to make sure that the proteges are elevated.
Right. You know, it's a little bit what I just talked about now. You know, we really have to, you know, kind of three big buckets, I would say. You know, really invest in their upward movement. You have to do it. You know, when you think about a sponsor is somebody that's going to be your advocate. They're going to be the folks that are going to be, when the doors are closed and we're talking about talent, they're the ones that are bringing up your name. They're the ones that are giving you that chance to succeed. And, you know, we need to put some skin in the game as well, and being able to invest in their upward mobility, because people who are in power and leadership roles and are the decision makers, you know, you're tying your reputation to the reputation of another person. So the other person also has to make sure that they're delivering. You also have to champion their visibility. You know, you want to make sure that when people are getting these projects, when people are doing a really good job, that you are helping them get that exposure, and not just exposure through your own mouth, but exposure through opening those doors and letting them in the room, giving them the opportunity to participate. And then really making sure you're creating experiences for them that are, you know, helping them grow and getting them ready for the next step. You know, again, anybody that I'm sponsoring, you know, I'll mentor just about anybody. In terms of a sponsor, if I'm putting my name on that person, I need to make sure that that person is very serious about what they want, that they know what they want. So somebody who says, oh, I'll relocate anywhere, help me get that job, and you get them that role, and then they say, oh, by the way, I can't relocate. That makes the sponsor a little bit less credible. And being honest about what you want. I mean, Stephanie Hill is at Lockheed Martin now. She's been with the company for 30 years. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. She's moving into a new role as an executive vice president. So African-American woman, champion of diversity, taking on this huge, huge business, which is amazing. So happy for her. You know, she hasn't had to relocate in her whole entire career. That's very unusual, and it's really wonderful for her. But she was very, very honest about that conversation when it came to the CEO. We'd love you to do this job. And she said, you know what, right now, parents are aging, just can't do it. My kids are in transitional times of their life. And we have to be honest, and we have to not be afraid to talk about the things that we need for ourselves. And, you know, it's interesting because men do it all the time. Men are not worried. Well, first of all, many times they are not worried about saying what they want in terms of salary, money, etc. But I will tell you that I've met many men, and I've talked to many of them, and they've said to me, you know, in some cases, I'm actually more jealous of you, Kimberly, because you can say, I want to get there for my child's recital. For me to say that, the other males are saying, what? You want to go where? You want to watch your daughter's ballet class? Or it's really unheard of. And I never really thought about that. And again, it goes back to my original point. If you take the time to get to know people, you really understand we're a lot more alike than you think. You know, the way we go about things are different. But there's a lot of foundational things that make us the same. So, you know, I think that sponsorship is all about, you know, influencing, using your influence to open the doors, to create the connections, to help make things happen, and really seeing them through, you know, not just leaving somebody out there to dry.
The US midterm elections were record-breaking. 117 women elected to positions. But when you look across the country and some of the statistics, less than 20% of women actually hold management positions. So how do women, aspiring leaders, position themselves to be in the type of leadership positions that you've been talking about? What do you do and what do you not do?
Right. Well, you know, the thing I always talk about is taking your seat at the table. And, you know, if you got that seat, you better get your hiney in it. And I can remember I got a leadership role. It was a pretty big role. It was actually, you know, I don't want to even name the company. I had so many great mentors and so many amazing companies that I've worked for. But I can remember walking into the board meeting. It was my first meetings there. And, you know, there's the round table and there's chairs at the table and then there's chairs around the wall, just to overflow. So I came into the meeting room and I sat against the wall because that's what you do, you know. Growing up in the boys club, the men were usually at the table. I wasn't the CEO, or I wasn't a vice president at the time. So I took a side chair and my boss came in and he was like, "What are you doing? Here, come on, there's room at the table." And I was like, "What?" You know, and I thought, well, I was on the leadership team. I still was a direct report, you know, to the leadership team. But I just didn't even think to sit at the table. And it's happened to me a couple of times in my career. So, you know, when you walk into that room, you should sit at the table. Don't save that seat for somebody else,
Right.
because you've earned
Right.
it yourself. And, you know,
Pull up a
we
chair.
it's totally true. And, you know, and when I walked into Lockheed Martin, sort of the same thing. And I can remember one time, first time there, first week, all day meeting, lots of men, quite frankly, all of them were men around the table. And I walked in and my first thought was to sit at one of those side chairs. And I was like, what is wrong with you, Kimberly? After everything you've accomplished, after everything that you've done in your career, you're going to take a side seat. Get out of your own head. You know, get out of your own head. So I think take your seat, number one. You know, you also have to use your voice, and not using your voice just to have conversation. A lot of people I see, and it hurts women sometimes, but you know, it doesn't seem to have the same impact on men, where, you know, men will just talk or people will just talk just to talk. You know, think about every time you're in a meeting, what am I going to say, or is what I'm about to say going to add value to the people around the room? Is it going to progress the conversation? Are we going to come out with a better outcome? Am I bringing a perspective that is different and unique, that's helpful? You know, sometimes you want to concur with somebody. There's a lot of voices that don't get heard. And I think as a good colleague to say, hey, Sue just said that. You know, I'm not so sure you guys heard what Sue said. It was actually a really good point. Hey, Sue, could you tell us a little more about that? You know, those are the kinds of things we can do for each other, and even for male colleagues. You know, I mean, I've done it for male colleagues as well. But, you know, again, using your voice. And, you know, like I said, you know, if you're advocating for others by saying everybody just stepped on that person's really good idea and giving them a chance. So those are sort of the things I think about when I believe, you know, somebody's made it, or, you know, somebody's on that cusp of making it, making sure, especially as a woman, but of course men should do this too, you know, take your seat. You earned it. Have that confidence to do that, and make sure that you're making a contribution and helping others voices be heard.
Okay. You know, this COVID-19 pandemic has thrust the global workforce to a new reality. And at home, a remote reality. You have traditional families where the husband and wife are sharing responsibilities with the children and their education. You also have single parents that are working and also acting as teachers. Share a few tips, if you will, on what has now become our new work-life balance.
Right. Well, there's so many things. I think if anybody's ever followed me, and if you haven't, you certainly can go to LinkedIn. You can read a lot of these articles that I've written and perspectives that I've shared. But, you know, my husband and I, when we met, we were both working at Siemens. We were both directors at Siemens Medical, you know, moving, shaking jobs, fell in love, married. Long story short, here we are 15 years later, actually 19 years later with the kids, married for 15. You know, about, I guess, maybe right around the time the kids were being born, I took a little time off from work because the kids were preemies and I just could not, I just really felt like the kids needed me at home. My husband
It's a
continued to
juggle.
work, and then it was a juggle. And, you know, I'll be honest, I had a woman that I was working with, and she was not that supportive. And I really remember one night, and I'm getting a little off topic here, so I do apologize, but I remember one night my son was crying and I was rocking him. You know, I was just standing in the doorway of his room and I was just rocking him. And I was like, oh God, please make this baby go to sleep. And I was like, what did I just say? What did I just say? I am holding one of the greatest blessings of my life, and I just can't wait for them to go to sleep so I can get sleep to go to work. No, this doesn't feel right at all. It didn't feel right at all. And I literally talked to my husband and said, listen, I don't think I can do this anymore. So I took some time off, and that was wonderful. I did a lot when I was off. I mean, I did a lot of volunteer work. I stayed on the board of trustees for the United Way of Camden County, did a lot of fundraising for other nonprofits. So great year, great time with my kids. All that was excellent. But shortly after that, I went back to work. My career started taking off. And when I got the job at Lockheed Martin, I said to my husband, you're working so far in Newark, New Jersey. It's well over an hour away. Lockheed's going to be pretty demanding. We have to figure something out. Love having the nannies here, but we need to be home. When the nannies were here and the au pairs were here, you know, we were still very involved because we had flexibility in our schedules. But we decided he would stay home. And it was hard. I mean, the struggle that we started with, both of us being, you know, executives in a company, working really hard. He had his own business at the time. And for him to move that business home and then ultimately shut it down was a big deal. So we had to think a lot about how are we going to operate. And, you know, now it's the same thing with this COVID-19. You know, you have to really have an honest conversation about who's doing what, you know, who's got these responsibilities. And it is hard. Right now, I'm taking a little bit of time off again, and it's wonderful for me to be able to do this. But I have a very strict schedule. I get up the same time every morning. Me and the kids wake up, we have our breakfast and our coffee, and we talk and we think about the day, and it's excellent. And then I usually get some sort of a workout in, either on my own or whatever. So when I think about, you know, COVID, and I think about what you can do, I think the most important thing is to have a schedule. You know, I'm really structured. I need a place to go in the morning. I thought I would die if I didn't have a place to go in the morning. But guess what? As long as you create some structure and some space for yourself and you know what to expect, I think it helps make you more productive. I get dressed every day. I put my makeup on, and I'm dressed today. I mean, normally I wouldn't wear a blazer all day long, but I do get dressed. I want to feel human. You know, I don't want to fall into this cave. You know, I think for the family, setting boundaries. I try to be very respectful. When I was working full time, I never brought my computers or phones or any of that to the dinner table when I didn't travel. So some structure, really making sure that everybody's happy, checking in with each other. A few years back, the family and I did, we created our own family values. And we said, you know, what are the things that can make us successful as a family? And we sat down and we thought, well, what are the things that we want to do? Who do we want to be as people? And the kids were like, well, you know, I think we want to be supportive. And I was like, oh, that's great. Okay, well, let's talk about that. And we came up with these like 6 rules, things that we're going to live by, you know, helping each other, be happy for each other's success, you know, put yourself in the other person's shoes, things like that. So I think when you're home full time with your family, you have to create that time, create that space. It's something that has to be done as a group. You can't just say, I'm the parent. This is what's going to happen. That doesn't work, you know, and that's no different than, guess what? Leading a team, you know, coming in and putting down the directive doesn't work there either. So, you know, I just think that, you know, now we were kind of lucky because my husband was already in a homemaker mode. And now I'm home and he's surprised at the things that I'm able to do, like cooking and cleaning and all these things that I never did before. Right, because we were very non-traditional, and now it is actually going back to that traditional 1950s way of life. But everybody's family is different, and I would just say that be patient with each other, and in times of stress, um, especially for married folks, and with your children, when you get short with your children, really think about that. Is really what's happening now is not the end all be all, or it's not a really good definition of who you are as a family, as a couple, as even a person. And take the time. And I had a massive
Right.
breakdown. I was crying in my kitchen one day, and I never cry like that. And my husband's like, okay, we're going to get in the car. We're going to just drive around town. And we drove by, waved to one of my friends on her street. Her kids came out, we waved. And, you have to be okay being vulnerable and really talking about what you need. So it's a difficult
Right.
time. It's a really difficult time.
And there's nothing like a good long ride, and throw in some prayer as well. But you
Yes.
mentioned a couple of things, and that is not everybody has been fortunate enough to have a nanny or to be able
Right.
to stay at home. I know I stayed at home the last 2 years of my son's high school life, and I treasure that time to this day. And you know what I also think about COVID-19, it has also allowed employers to take a second look at people working from home in different circumstances. So how do you change the mindset that women who have children
Mhm.
can't give 100+% compared to those who don't have children?
Right. It's been very difficult as a female who was, I know one job I was working boys club, international company, real global company where headquarters was abroad. And I can remember being, sitting down with the head of the group, and they said, I just want to let you know, a woman is never going to have the top spot here in the States or even in this other country. They're not going to do that. And, you're probably going to get married. You're probably going to have kids. You're probably going to be out of the workforce. And I just, really was like all women, just grateful for the opportunity and the job. And, you do what you do. And time went by a little while. And I just always felt like if you're performing and doing a good job, you're going to get noticed and recognized. And actually in this case, it really was true. I ended up having that top spot at that company, running public communications for their, most profitable business in the United States. So, that was an interesting conversation. And as I've gone through my career, even when I've had female bosses who were not married and didn't have children, I was always very apprehensive about talking about my family and about my personal situation. I mean, there were times I can remember, where family members were really sick or I had to be somewhere, whatever, and I would never really say what I was doing. I would let my secretary know, okay, I'm going to be heading out now. If anybody calls, tell them that I have a personal situation and I'll be back online in 2 hours. I never wanted to say that my child was sick or this happened or whatever. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why having a family is a taboo thing, or at least it feels to the individuals who have the family that it's taboo. I would say I don't judge anybody other than the performance that they're delivering. And we have to have faith in the system. And I think if more
Right.
women talk about their lives, and talk about what they need to be successful, and talk about the fact that they want to be there when their kids are giving a speech at the school or their Mother's Day tea or whatever it is that happens, or trick or treating, to be honest with you. Um, there's just so many things that whatever's important to you. And if somebody doesn't like it, I'll be honest with you, then that's not the place you should be working. I know that sounds really
Absolutely.
easy to say, but it's true. And when I got my job at Lockheed Martin, the first 6 months when I worked at General Electric, I didn't see my family. My kids were little. They were a little over a year, maybe about a year and a half old. I started working there. I really wanted to knock it out of the park. I would leave before they got up. I would come home after they were asleep already. Luckily, my husband was home. We had the au pair. Good. He wasn't home full time at the time, but he had a more flexible schedule than me. And then 6 months later, I read that book that Mika Brzezinski put out, Knowing Your Value, Knowing Your Worth. So I read the book, and Mika was actually employed by GE because they owned NBC at the time. Okay. And I had a lot of exposure to hearing her speak. And she had talked about this time that she was so exhausted and how hard she was working, and that she almost was in a bad situation with one of her children. And, she went to fight for the money and this and that really stuck with me. And I thought to myself, again, what the heck am I doing? This is so unnecessary to be out of the home for 12 hours a day. Nobody's making me do it. I'm doing it to myself. So when I interviewed with Lockheed, I sat there with the executive vice president, a bunch of other bigwigs interviewing me at the time to be on their leadership team. And after the interview, I said, I just want to let you know, I have young children at home. If I'm not traveling, I'll be home every day for dinner. I'll be home for dinner every day, 6 p.m., because that's what I put in place when I worked at General Electric. And these are the things that I need. And I can tell you, one time they had a meeting that was supposed to start at 4 o'clock. By 6:15, that meeting was not started yet. And I said, I have to leave. And I got in my car and I drove home, and I was shaking a little bit. And it was just a bad day that day. But anyway, long story short, guess what happened? Nothing happened. I went home, I had dinner with my family. And the next day I came into the office and my boss said, I'm so sorry that you guys were waiting around. I'm glad you decided to leave, because we actually are rescheduling the meeting for next week. Could you imagine if I sat around there just waiting? Because he had a major situation. His admin was out and there was just a breakdown in communication because it was late in the day. So we do it to ourselves. So I will say to everybody who's working, however you show up is what the expectation is going to be. If you're that person that's checking email all weekend, responding, sending notes at the end of the day, guess what? Your boss is always going to expect that from you. So if you want to respond, you can say, hey, little unusual for me to be responding to a non-urgent matter. Just had a few minutes and wanted to get ahead because Tuesday I'm out of the office. Whatever it is, set your parameters, because if you don't, that will become your norm. And we do it to ourselves. There is not one manager out there that legitimately is saying, I want my person to be available to me 24/7. They're not. If you are, they love it. As a manager, I love it. Work all day long, I love it. But it's not sustainable. It isn't. And I tell people, and you can talk to many people that have worked for me.
I don't think it's healthy either.
It's not. And I walk around their office. Yeah, we have dinner with our families every night.
You walk around the block.
Agreed. I agree. So, we do it to ourselves. And, I don't think that the mindset is there. I think the mindset is in our own minds. And it kind of does come back with starting with yourself, understanding your value, understanding your worth. And if it's not a good fit, guess what? There's always a great job for great people. There is.
There you go. Okay. We're going to have some more fun right now. Rapid fire. Suits versus dresses, Kimberly.
Suits. You froze
Bare
up.
arms versus sleeves.
We just talked about this. I like sleeves.
Red versus blue.
I'm wearing both today, but I'm going to go with blue.
Pearls versus silver.
Silver.
Pumps, which are now coming back, versus flats.
I think flats. If we're talking about the pumps of the 80s, no.
And then Nicole threw this in, so I will let you know that I'm being authentic for Nicole. Coffee versus wine.
What time of the day is it? And am I going to be speaking to all of you? I love wine, but I will tell you this, when you think about women in the workplace today, I would say that everybody was a lot more conservatively dressed. There is a balance today because the workplace is getting a little bit more, looser. I would say a little bit more relaxed, but relaxed doesn't mean sloppy and doesn't mean unprofessional. So I'm the type of person that even on dress down meetings, I would wear something like what I'm wearing today. So something that's not super buttoned up, a little bit of a flare in my jacket, for more formal meetings, usually in a solid. But I would say that, especially for women, it's unfortunate, but, women have to be a little bit more careful about what they're wearing. And, I don't think it should be like this, but it is. And women also have a lot more options. You can do a dress or a skirt or something mixed, or you can put, prints and solids or prints and patterns together, where men just really do a suit and a tie. Their biggest accessory is a tie, and their dress down is no tie, and their dress up is a tie. And women do have a lot more options. So I do think that, dress for what makes you feel most comfortable, what makes you feel professional. When you're working from home, ladies and even men, get dressed. Don't take your meetings in pajamas. You know, so, but I not a judge of how people dress unless they are wildly,
Right.
wildly inappropriately dressed in the workplace.
And when you're doing interviews like this virtually, make sure you've got some bottoms on. And
I
don't
do
go
have
to the
bottoms on.
bathroom during the,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
we've seen some real snafus in the past couple of weeks. I won't name any names though.
Right.
You know, you've given us a lot of advice on being successful and authentic. And today we have business leaders, CEOs, we also have managers, owners on the virtual experience with us. Share 3 things that should be done to lead teams to be successful.
Right. Well, the things that I always talk about is, of course, I have my regular advice, but at the core of everything that I do, number 1 is just being human. You know, we can always back into a business. When you are working for somebody, whether it's the shareholders or you're working for a boss, your customers, whatever it is, you have to deliver. There's no question about that. But there's no reason why you can't be human first and try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. So if somebody's not delivering something, making sure you're letting that person know, giving them the benefit of the doubt to say, you know, hey, is there something that I should know about, something I can help you with? Are you resource strapped? Those types of things. So I think being human first, because you can always back into a business case or a business result. So I start with human. Because we are human, we will make mistakes, we are all different, and we all are motivated by different things. For those CEOs and those leaders, you know, people really matter. They're your most important asset in the workplace. And without those people, you have no engine to run your company. People don't leave companies, they leave bad managers, they leave leadership they don't believe in, people they can't follow. And I like to be the kind of leader that you want to follow because I've earned it. I don't want to be the kind of leader that I tell you what to do and you do it. So people do matter, and pay attention to them and get to know them. Reputation matters. Being that person that people know that they can trust, that's got their back, that's in their corner, that's going to do the right thing, that's operating with integrity, that's going to keep the company successful. That's really important. So really your reputation is everything. And really finally, being authentic. You know, the only way you're going to create the environment that we just talked about here is if you're actually being authentic and sharing your genuine views on life. So being authentic is important. And when you're not authentic, people know it. You know, people walk around
Absolutely.
faking the smile, faking the whatever. No, we all know, we see right through it. People are smart.
Mm-hmm.
So be your own authentic self. And again, those are the ways that you create an environment where people will give that discretionary effort and they will show up for work and they want to deliver. And they want to deliver not only for themselves, but for you, for the company, for everybody. So those are the 3 things that I would ask everybody to keep in mind.
Thank you. As a regional leader in the greater Philadelphia area, what do you see as strengths and weaknesses? Give us 2 or 3 strengths and weaknesses.
Well, you know, in the region, I say one of the things that we really benefit from is the diversity of people. We have all kinds of people. It really is a melting pot in the region of companies to work for, of the individuals that actually are, you know, running around our streets and our communities. And you have a range of people that are really well off and people that aren't. So I think that diversity is something that we can all learn from and gives us opportunities to make a difference. But I also, you know, I also think the diversity of culture is really cool. You know, we were messing around with the backgrounds earlier and I was looking at all the backgrounds in Philadelphia, and it really just reminds you about the cultural diversity and the fun and excitement that's happening in this region. And I don't know that I would say a weakness. I think right now our biggest challenge and the big challenge for this Philadelphia area, if you will, is really this virus. You know, people are not working. You know, the homeless are getting further and further away from not being homeless, and people that weren't homeless are becoming homeless because they can't pay their bills. And, you know, I don't know when people are going to feel comfortable enough to actually be, go back to resume their normal life. When are they going to feel comfortable to say hi to somebody? It's really interesting. Even for my family and I, me and the children didn't see anybody for 2 months, literally 2 months. We're just now in the last couple of weeks getting out and riding our bikes up a park, that we're getting out and walking. So I feel like in a metropolitan area, like, Philadelphia and all those surrounding areas where there's a lot of hustle and bustle and a lot of movement. That's a real challenge right now. So thinking about the ways we can help these small businesses survive. And I know that there's a lot happening, but that's probably the biggest thing. And, it's a very strong region, very committed leaders, very committed businesses, very committed nonprofits that are involved. So really just doing our part. And I know that we'll bounce back. I know the whole country will bounce back.
Something I've always admired about living here is that whenever there's a crisis in this area, you see an overabundance of help or relief, or people just pitching in from all walks of life. So it's a good place to be, and it's a good time for all of us to think about what's really important, and people that we hadn't considered essential in our lives outside of police, firefighters, EMS, hospital workers, but folks at the grocery store. And what I don't like is, I'm wearing a mask and I'm used to saying, hi, how you doing? Talking to people,
Right.
But no one can really hear you, and no one can really see your smile, as you mentioned,
Right.
So Nicole, I think it's time now to take some questions, if you're good with that.
I am good with that. Thank you both so much. I'm going to virtual applause for you again. You both did a really wonderful job, and we just want to thank you so much for your time today. So I will open the Q&A box, and we have, what do you think is the next huge fundamental change for women, this being the 100th year of the women's right to vote? Do you think that we as women are starting to be complacent, unlike women of the 70s who pushed the ERA and women's rights? Have you watched Miss America on Hulu about the women's ERA movement?
Okay. So, and Monique, I don't know if you want me to take them, or Monique probably has perspective as well. So I'd love to have her share. To answer the last part first, I have not watched it. I turned it on and said, oh, that looks really interesting. So I do plan on watching that. I'm very curious. The next big thing for women, you'll have a mixed bag. Some folks will feel, well, women have come a long way. They have every right that a man has. You have that group. I'm of the mindset in diversity in general, you can never stop talking about it, because the second you stop talking about diversity in the workplace, whatever that diversity looks like, is the second people think you've arrived. And we haven't. So women still get paid less than men. I mean, studies, I have so many studies and packages of information. And it's amazing that today in the year, 2020, we still are talking about the same stuff we were talking about 25 years ago. Do I think there's going to be this major uprising of women demanding more money in the workplace? I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think you will see more movements. I mean, the Me Too movement was one, just to talk about, and that was broader than just, I believe, sexual harassment. It was really in general, just treating women with disrespect or not thinking of them as equal to men. So I would say, in terms of the next movement, it's gonna have to be a movement that happens every day. It doesn't necessarily have to be this big voice that's coming out, although the big voices are sometimes, they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I don't know, Monique, if you have a perspective on that, or that you.
I think that we're going to see more women running for office than ever before. I think that there's a mindset in a lot of occupations that women over 50 are kind of the throwaway, position. I think we're going to see women working older. More women are working into their 60s and 70s in different positions, including consulting positions. I think that politically, we may see the first female vice president that will be, applauded across the country by particular groups. I think we're going to see more women as college presidents as well. So I think it's a good time now. And a lot of it, of course, was launched by the Me Too movement. In Philadelphia, we had a female win an office, a seat on city council from not a Democratic Party, not a Republican Party, but a party for the working families.
Right.
So I think we're going to see bolder women, stronger women, and your advice on making sure that your bosses know what you need and how valuable you are.
Right.
Great. We have a few more. What is your opinion of college majors for women? What should women be majoring in? What is hot right now for women in the workplace? And what are great future jobs for women in the region?
You know, working at
Anything
Lockheed Martin.
online.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Well, that's probably going to be the case.
Cybersecurity to internet to web design, the other spectrum, gaming,
Right.
animation, all of the things that are grabbing our attention right now. What do you think, Kimberly?
Well, I just think that anything in STEM, you know, even working at Lockheed Martin, you know, 50% of the company was basically engineers, and there was a very small percentage that were women. And even if you do some basic math and say, all right, if there's this many women going into colleges and this many men going into colleges, and even if there's less women who are going into, you know, STEM type of education or careers, we should still see more women. A lot of women are coming out of colleges with STEM degrees and not even working in that field. So I do think that that is a missed opportunity for us. I also think, unfortunately, some of the shows, you know, portray these really smart women or these technology savvy women as sort of nerdy, ponytailed, you know, crazy dressers with thick glasses. And that's just not true. I know many women who are engineers who are models. I mean, they're gorgeous. So you don't have to be a nerd to be in STEM education. You can still be a, you know, very beautiful, vibrant woman and still be really, really smart in, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math. So.
And what is your advice that you would give to young professionals who are just starting out in their professional journey?
I would just say one thing. Everybody is driven by money. I think this, take the experience first, the money will come later. Believe me, there is no substitute for experience, and all the things that I talk to this group about and things I talk to all, you know, the next generation about, the reason I can feel so confident and tell somebody what I want is I've earned it. I know my trade, I know my people and what motivates them, and I can be successful. And if you do not get the experience, believe me when I tell you, you will be found out. You can get that great big job making big money, but if you don't deliver and you don't perform, it's not going to happen for you. So take the experience first, be patient. There's no substitute for experience.
Okay, this one.
My parents used to tell us to work hard and you'll earn your rewards.
I agree.
Great. At the outset, you stated, even if we look the same, we bring different thoughts and perspectives due to our life experiences. However, not looking the same is a crucial component of our life experiences and perspective. My question is, what has your organization done to deliberately and intentionally increase racial and ethnic diversity? And what is the percentage of racially and ethnically diverse individuals in management and leadership? And it says at your company, so I think they're talking about Lockheed possibly.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say that Lockheed was a very interesting company. GE as well. You know, I'm very, very interested in diversity and inclusion. Lockheed Martin invested millions of dollars, no lie, in their leadership. It started with vice presidents. They had a mandatory training. It is literally a 1-week submersion into a program about, you know, being inclusive leaders, where they take white men and they go to a white man's caucus. They come back and then they participate in this inclusive leader program with women and people of color. And there are it's an intense week. I mean, it's an intense week where you really are starting to empathize and understand. You can ask all the questions you wanted to ever know about anybody. And it really helps you put yourself in the feet of other, you know, in the shoes of other people. And that's the one story I told you guys earlier about one of the men that I was working with. We happened to be in that class together, and he said, "Hey, you don't think that I want to go to my kid's recital? You don't think I want to do that? But I'm afraid if I do that, my boss is going to think less of me," sort of thing. So they made big investments to help have that dialogue, and not only have the dialogue in the class, but have the dialogue when you're back at your work. And then they brought that all the way down to level 5 leaders, level 4 leaders, all through the whole company. So the whole company is talking the same language. They are talking about, how can we be an inclusive environment? How do we make sure all voices are heard? How do you bring your whole self to work? We also believe in the best person for the role. And, of course, we always want to see more women being the winners. We do. I think women are just as capable as men. And I'll tell you, Marilyn Houston has been running that company for a while. And if you look at where Lockheed Martin is and the success of that company, it was a company that was $82 a share when I started there almost 10 years ago, and it's in the 400s. So, all-time high this year. Marilyn would say, please don't say because I'm a woman. I'm a hard worker, I'm a smart person, but the truth is she is a female CEO.
Right.
And people look at her that way. So I do think that there's a place for everybody at the table. A lot of women will say to me, well, if you and Stephanie and this other woman are in the leadership team, is there space for me? Yep, there's actually 13 chairs. All 13 chairs can be filled by anybody, regardless of color, regardless of race, regardless of, sexual orientation, whatever it is, doesn't matter. There's a place for everybody and we just have to know it. So I'm very proud of the work that Lockheed Martin did. I'm very proud of the opportunities they gave me to get involved in diversity inclusion. I did a lot of work with the military and veterans, I did a lot of work with the African-American communities there because, it's a very, very important. And we find that the African-American community and people of color actually have a worse experience in the workplace than white men and white women. And it's fascinating if you look at that, and they find that they're getting less sponsorship. So the company is really digging into all of these issues so that we can have the best possible workplace possible.
Excellent. So I'm going to combine two of these.
I think sometimes.
Go ahead, Monique.
I think sometimes it's difficult to find sponsorships, older sponsorships, helping younger sponsorships in the African-American community.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can go out and recruit somebody and say, hey, can you help me along the way? It just depends on the occupation too, the field.
Right. Well, there was a requirement there that all of the leaders really need to be involved in these types of activities. And it's very visible. I was a very visible leader walking around, and I got invited to speak everywhere. And I love being able to spend the time with folks. And I had a list of mentees that I still talk with today, and they still reach out to me and still talk with me today. So, again, it starts with self.
And I applaud you for being intentional.
In the mirror. Yeah, you have to be intentional. That's really a great word, Monique. Yeah.
So I'm going to combine these two questions because they're very similar. Women have come so far and are in better positions to help other women, but what is your opinion on still needing buy-in and support from men in C-suite positions? Do you see that as a critical part of women succeeding in their roles? And the other person had said, how can we get men who understand the issues more involved in supporting the women's movement in the workplace? So they're kind of the same, in where people are asking, when are we going to end this men need to champion us? Like, do you think that's a thing? Like, how long do you think that's going to be?
I think yes, and when I was running the women's community at Lockheed, I had worked with, I did interviews with females who were on the cusp of being promoted to vice president level, and many vice presidents and even EVPs and senior vice presidents. And I interviewed all of them and asked them a little bit about their career. I asked them about their challenges that they had through their career. And then I did the same thing with men. After I had those conversations, I interviewed men that I thought were real big champions of diversity, and men that I thought would be the same type of folks. This is going to be so crazy what I'm about to say. But somebody actually said to me, do you know why there's not that many women in leadership roles? And I was like, no, I don't. Why don't you enlighten me? Well, because they've stopped sleeping their way to the top. Somebody actually said that to me. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I was kind of furious. And I didn't want to freak out, but I was like, first of all, wildly inappropriate. And then I walked through some of the women that I had known in the workplace and said, believe me when I tell you, these are their credentials, because I know them like that. These are their credentials. Please, let's rephrase and let's think about what we're saying. Well, I was just being funny. Yeah, well, that just being funny is really wildly inappropriate. And that's what makes people feel they can't bring their whole selves to work. So that's kind of one thing. So do you need a man to champion you? You might if they're the decision makers. But I would say that anybody can be your advocate and champion. If you have a leader who is well respected, somebody that knows you well, that can vouch for your performance, your genuine ability to learn and be successful and be the right leader and represent the company well, it really shouldn't matter who's sponsoring you. But I will tell you, in those interviews that I had done with men, every single man that I interviewed said, yeah, I would champion that person. I would get to know that person, was asking me, how do I do it now? And with the Me Too movement, unfortunately, in some cases, a lot of men that were sponsoring people felt a little nervous. Do I really want to have a drink with this person after work like I did 5 years ago? Do I want, and maybe that's not right, do I want to close my office door and have a private conversation with them? So, you know, the movements that we have, they're important, absolutely important. We have to make sure that we're not putting an adverse, impact out there. But you'd be surprised at how many men were very willing to help and support. And we actually started matching folks up just on a little pilot program, started matching people up to say, hey, this is going to be your person. This is what I know about them. It seems like there's a good fit. Let's start out with mentoring and see if this could grow into sponsorship. And again, like Monique said, being very intentional. You have to.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like whoever's got the influence, grab that person as your sponsor. Make sure that they know you, make sure that you've demonstrated your worth and value, and it shouldn't really matter. But there are more men in leadership roles, unfortunately. That's the way it is today.
Monique, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Okay. So the last question, and we have so many, so thank you all for submitting them. The last question I have is that I really resonate with your comment about setting your boundaries and how you show up leads to expectations. Thank you for that comment. How have you dealt with leaders or fellow colleagues, managers who still hold a perspective that value equals hours instead of value equals quality of work?
Yeah. You really just have to have the confidence and just do what you need to do. I can remember when I first started out in finance, people would be working so many hours. They'd be there early in the morning to late at night. And I'd be like, what are they even doing? They're literally pencil pushing. And I just don't believe in FaceTime. And I guess because I started working in corporate America at 17 years old, I saw it and I observed things that I just thought seemed to not make any sense at all. Quite frankly, I worked at a small agency that was recording your hours. It was a 9-to-5 job. And I would get ready to leave at 5 o'clock and my vice president would say, where are you going? I was like, well, I'm done. There's no reporters to talk to. I don't have any breaking news. All my, reports to my clients are done. What do you want me to do? Sit here and do nothing? And it doesn't make any sense. So if I have to work longer, I would work longer. And I think that I really, you have to sort of create that movement and that acceptance in your workplace. And that's what I've done with the folks, and I haven't always been in charge. I know you're like, oh, it's so easy. When you're a vice president, you're in charge. No, I wasn't always a vice president. I was a manager. I was an accounting executive. I was an admin. I've done all these types of roles. And I've just always strongly believed there, but I also believed in myself. And that's why I say, get your experience first. Once you know your trade, right, and once you can very quickly say, these are the things that I've done today. I know clearly what I have to do tomorrow. I know what my requirements are at the end of the week. When you are that in tune to what's happening, you can walk out confident and you can say, hey, I'm going to head out. Is there anything you need before I head out? And if your boss says, no, I'm good, that's their problem. If they want help, and I don't waste time at work, you have to get to know your people. So a little bit of chit chat is a good thing. I have an open door policy. People walk in, they want to do a quick mentoring, but I limit those things. And I don't spend my whole day in meetings. My meetings, we have agendas. If you want to meet with me, I want to see an agenda. I want to know what you want to talk about. I want to be prepared. I want to expedite that time because I don't want to be your bottleneck. And I'm actually not your friend. I'd love to be friendly with people, and I am, but we're not at work to have friends. If you make them, great. We're actually there to do a job. And I just don't, subscribe to that sort of thinking, FaceTime. I just don't. And I've set those parameters for myself, and I work when I have to work and I leave when I have to leave, you know?
I think also it depends on the occupation. Like all I've ever known is working a 10-hour
Yes.
day. If I was on a major news scene, it could be a 12-hour day. So I think before you get into a specific occupation, you need to investigate what your hours are going to be like, what's required of you. You know, we would work 6 hours before the news began, and then we could be on a scene another 2 or 3 hours. So I think it varies a lot by occupation, but I also think if you're choosing a career, choose something, as you mentioned, that's going to fit you, your humanity, your goals for a family, because you may not be there a good 10-hour chunk of the day. And then, you know, if you go to a boss and you say, I gotta go home, you know, you may have some bosses who say, well, didn't you know this before you decided to get into this profession? You know, you will have some guys and women who may say that to you.
Right. Yeah, knowing yourself is very important. And knowing what you want for yourself is important.
Know what you can do, what you can handle.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. We're a little over an hour, so I want to be respectful of both of your time and our attendees today. So once again, thank you for your time and your knowledge. This was a great interview. I'm going to say, yay! I'm so happy I learned how to have my little clapping in the background. So now I can do that.
Right.
I wanted to remind everyone that we're going to be sending the recording of today's event along with that attendee list for your introductions. So please remember to check your emails. I also wanted to encourage everyone to sign up for our next SPW event, which is on June 18th with Laura Gassner-Oding at spwmainline.com on how to live limitlessly, which is one of her books. And it will most likely be virtual. I believe we are still making decisions on if all of our events till the end of the year will be virtual, but I'm pretty much sure that will be, but we'll continue communicating with our group. You can also sign up for all of our chamber events at mlcc.org. As always, please let us know if there's anything that myself or the Mainline Chamber of Staff can do to help you and or your business during this time. We don't take your support for granted, and we want you all to succeed. So before I let you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for sharing a part of your day with us, I want to be sure to thank our sponsors one more time as everyone is leaving. So thank you again, Kimberly and Monique, for your time today. And thank you to all of our sponsors of the SPW program. Have a wonderful day.
My pleasure.
Thanks.